What if the two most prominent jihadist groups decided to fight each other? Well, we have unconfirmed reports from extremist media outlet Mashal Radio that state that Daesh, or ISIS, as is known in the Western world, and the Taliban have declared jihad against each other. Madison, let me tell you how we learned this. Nabijan Mulakil, this is a police chief in the biggest and largest province in Afghanistan, has told the radio in an interview that they do have in their power right now documents in which both the terrorist group have in fact declared jihad against each other. And this changes the narrative in the Middle East completely, because it's the first time that we see two of the most prominent terrorist organizations actually declaring war against each other.
I think it's an interesting factor that they're actually defining themselves what's considered an extremist.
Yes.
And it goes back to going, what are they actually fighting for? And if they're actually fighting each other, perhaps maybe they can work it out to know what is this war on terror and why are they fighting? And maybe looking at each other might actually be a first movement of maybe perhaps figuring it out, because becomes very confusing when we have all of these terrorist groups and what exactly is the reason that they want to inflict this terror.
And I think you bring light to the root of the problem. The Taliban, last summer, they declared straight up to ISIS, said, you guys are being too extreme. The fighters in Iraq and Syria, they need to shy away from being extremists, so all of the jihad organizations can actually work together. And ISIS didn't listen. Actually, ISIS increased and upped their violent operations to the point that the Taliban said, you guys are completely out of order, you guys are declaring jihad against other Muslims, you guys are killing other Muslims just because you guys want to assert a certain level of power in the region. And I think that boils down the situation. I think that we're seeing ISIS, that is the strongest jihad in the region right now, the one that has the most territory, but at the same time we see the Taliban, a very local to Afghanistan group that might be a little bit hampered right now by the presence of the US in Afghanistan that is sizable in comparison to other areas of the region. And the Taliban saying, if you guys keep on the extremist line, we're gonna find ourselves against military action from coalitions around the world. If we are more moderate, maybe we can unite and have better results, which is scary at the same time.
Well, exactly, but at least they're asking these questions now for the well-being of the Middle East. I mean, they are saying that the West is to blame for some of the things that are happening within the Middle East and why they're fighting back, but now they're looking at each other, and that means they're reflecting what's the well-being for the Middle East and all of these countries. And I think we have to, again, war and terror and power and control is not going to bring peace
Exactly.
So I think that actually perhaps this might be, as this goes on, maybe it will be a step in the right direction, that they're both looking at each other and facing the fact that extremist is not the answer for a sustainable future for the Middle East.
It is not, and this is a conflict in between Taliban and ISIS that has been happening for many years now. ISIS is an offshoot of Al-Qaeda. Al-Qaeda, it's a separate group from the Taliban. The Taliban operates in Afghanistan, where Al-Qaeda and then ISIS grew up more in the Syria and Iraq region. But Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, who is the leader of ISIS, has actually gone to the extent of calling the Taliban leader, Mullah Muhammad Omar, a fool and an illiterate warlord. So the beef that they have in between each other, if you will, has been running for a long, long time. And the problem is that ISIS has been disowned by this more established jihadist group like Al-Qaeda, because they merged with other Syrian groups that were way more extremist than the way the Al-Qaeda and the Taliban operated. That they were violent, they are violent groups, but at some level they haven't been carrying the bloody attacks that ISIS became known for.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I definitely agree. I think that when you look at these terrorist groups and see what they're going after these countries, and the fact that now that they're taking a look at it themselves and saying, why are we actually fighting and what's the cause behind it? I think that that actually is the first it brings progression to at least reflect. And that's where we are, because this is an unconventional war. This is isolated groups, and finding out and solving this problem is not an easy one. So the fact that they're taking a look at each other perhaps is a step in the right direction, even if it is fighting it out.
Well, the idea is for these groups to start dissolving and start curbing the violence in the region. The reality is that most likely this is a situation where the Taliban is trying to strengthen their position in the region and avoid ISIS from going into Afghanistan and taking hold of Afghanistan. We want to know, what do you think? Do you think this war in between the Taliban and ISIS signals for a shift in the way this war is developing, or this is just speculation? Let us know what you think in the comments, and if you haven't, please subscribe to the Lib TV too.